to the organizers for inviting me. This was the title that was given to me. I hope I can live up to the turbulent part of it. I am a biological oceanographer at the Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute, and I'm also affiliated with the Central and Northern California Oceanography System, CENCRUS. When I was thinking about preparing for this presentation, there was two industry groups that I thought might be targeted by this. Those that depend on the local ocean and climate weather for their products, those that are growing plants on land and developing oysters, say, in the Northwest, and those that might be in the business of climate change or global change. That is, we will take advantage of knowing what's going to happen in the future and do something with that. And of course, we're seeing some of that in the Gulf of Mexico with proliferation of folks trying to help deal with that scenario. When I was a graduate student at Duke, doing my PhD off Peru and the big 92-83 El Nino hit, I used to get calls from soybean farmers in Argentina wanting to know what the El Nino state was, because they knew that the success of their soybeans was intimately tied to the climate in the Pacific. They don't need to call me anymore, they can now go to the web. But I think the role of IUS and the ocean observing community is to make that information easier and better available. So Tony already showed this. I apologize a little bit for the quality of this. And he only showed, I think, the more recent period. This is a longer period starting in 1875. If we take the global mean temperatures and plot them, that's what they look like, with a trend over the last 100 years of about 0.01 degrees C per year. But you can see that at different times the rate was a little higher, then a little lower, then a little higher, and then I'll argue maybe a little lower recently. And it's about that variability that I'm going to talk about. I'm going to try to stay away from the drivers of the long-term trends and focus mainly on the drivers of the smaller trends that are hidden in this larger trend. Tony also showed this, and actually in his slide for sea level, the different trends were even clearer than they are here, with, say, a faster rise. I think his was a little longer than this one. This is just the rate measured by satellites. And when you take these rates, which are going up globally, and look at what they look like spatially, these are the pictures that emerge. On the top, you have the trend in SST from 1981 to the present, and on the bottom, you have the trend in sea level from 1993 to the present, and you see that both of these have quite similar patterns, and these patterns are driven by some of the variability that I'll try to explain to you in the next few slides. But not everything is changing uniformly. And in fact, the ocean off of California over the last 30 years or so, and sea level off of California over the last 30 years ago, seems to be falling. It won't be that way all the time, but at least for this period of climate variability, that's the picture that emerges. So SST and sea level are rising globally. The SST rise, of course, is a matter of considerable debate, but it doesn't really matter, right? We're going to have to deal with it one way or another. Sea level rise is pretty clear what's driving that. How much is contributed by each of those two processes is still not clear. rise is not uniform in time or space, and some areas are falling over the last decades. And some of these patterns can be explained by quote-unquote natural variability, and these natural variations, as well as the long-term ones, which is what Tony talked about primarily, have consequences. This is a model put together by my colleagues at JPL and the University of Maine. The time is on the bottom, and what you can see with this is that indeed the ocean is very, very variable. And the next speakers are going to drill into the variability next to the coast of California. But you can see that even over the course of these last 15 or so years, you can tell that some years are very different from the others, and in fact that some decades are different from the others. The colors are sea surface temperature, the relief is sea surface height, and you can see the strong eddies over in the Kuroshio region, less so off of California, but still present. So that's the ocean that we're dealing with. And if we take that ocean and decompose it into different modes, and that's what I'm going to do next, you get the following pictures. And for this analysis, we've taken off that trend at the top that you already saw, and then looked at the different modes of variability. And this first mode is one that everybody is familiar with, which is El Nino. And you can see that that mode is evident in sea surface temperature in the second panel, in sea level in the third panel, and in chlorophyll in the fourth panel. And what you can't see very well is that if you plot those time series, which are at the bottom, by the way, let me explain this, use this one figure to explain these. The time series of the variation in the second panel is shown at the bottom. So whenever the time series is pink or red, you take that value and multiply it by the map. And so red values are times when SST is warm. So all of these periods here are El Nino events, thank you, which are warm. And the opposite is, it's an interesting pointer. The opposite is true in the blue periods when it's cold, and then this feature would be exactly inverted. So it would be cold here, and warm in these areas here. And that's the El Nino La Nina cycle. The other thing that you can't see very well is that all of these time series match perfectly on a global scale. So there's very tight coupling between what's happening in the physical ocean and what's happening in biology, at least as we measure it in terms of chlorophyll. And what's important for climate is that there is a associated climatic condition that's called the Southern Oscillation. And it was coined by a scientist in 1924, actually, a scientist by the name of Sir Herbert Walker, who noticed that when the atmospheric pressure was high over here, it was low over here. And that pressure oscillates with El Nino and La Nina. If we zoom into what happens off California, this is the picture. And those of you that live in Southern California, and those of us that live in Central California, know that the storm track then comes down much further south than normal during these events.